Hi, everyone. Welcome to the episode of the Pain Point Project. I'm Tam, and we have Lam with us today. And today we also have Robert Wise, our guest on our show. Robert, you are the co-founder of Rise Anxiety and Depression Clinic, as well as the podcast host of The Wise Way to Success. So would you be able to briefly introduce yourself a little bit more for our audience so they know a little bit more about you?
Yes, sure. Yes, I did co-found an anxiety and depression clinic. I recently started a podcast to help people with their mental health called The Wise Way to Success. And my goal and my mission is to help people, live their best life. I know that might sound like cliche, but I actually think that people could live their best life without anxiety, depression, fear, phobias, PTSD, self-esteem issues. I think people can get past these things and live a better, healthier, happier life. I really do believe that's possible.
Yeah, so this is actually like the first time that you and I meet. So a lot of this stuff is going to be quite candid as we go along throughout this episode. But we love to just dive right into it. So we want to know in a brief sentence, what was your pain point?
Well, my pain point actually got me hospitalized in the 90s. Way back in those times. We had dinosaurs then, So
I was born in the 90s. It wasn't dinosaurs.
Okay, there wasn't dinosaurs then.
I was
born in the 80s. I was born in the 80s, so I'm happy that people know that we're not dinosaurs in the 90s. But my pain point was I had extremely intrusive thoughts. I do want to touch on intrusive thoughts and compulsive thought, which both cause pain because they're both very hard to deal with. An intrusive thought is a very scary thought. It could be, if I eat this salad, I'll give you a real example from a client. If I eat this salad, I'm going to die. So it's an intrusive thought. And a compulsive thought is, I better do this a certain amount of times or this will happen. Mm-hmm. So you can have an intrusive thought, but it doesn't mean it's a compulsive thought.
That's very interesting because, we always often think about that little voice in our heads, right? And what that voice tends to try to tell us all the time. But it's really good that you were able to clarify that, just that comparison. But when you were able to identify what was an intrusive thought versus a compulsive thought, how did that make you feel? And how were you really able to identify or make that difference between them?
It took a while. I didn't at first know what it was, so I'll be very candid. My intrusive thought was quite intrusive. Like, I'd be just very candid here on this show. The pain point. So my OCD was very specific. My obsessive compulsive disorder when I was a teenager was very specific. It was very rooted to numbers, even in odd numbers. So based on the date, so if it's like, let's say June 2nd, I could do things 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 times. On odd days, which is like, let's say June 3rd, I could do things 1 time, 5 times, 7 times. If I did things an even amount of time, there would be a consequence in my mind. You're going to get cancer. Your mom's going to die. So you want to be very careful to make sure that you are being mindful of the numbers so not to get the consequence.
It's almost like playing hopscotch. It's a little bit
It is.
Right? Like
It is hard. It is like playing a hopscotch. So one of the intrusive thoughts I had was, I'll be very candid, was it was an odd day. It was an odd day. Odd days were always scary for me because the odd day means, okay, it's something I've never done before, because that would be the first time I did it. So odd days are scary because even days had 0. So if I didn't do it, it's okay because I don't have to. It's an even day. But on an odd day, you can get an intrusive thought like, Rob, go into the trunk of that car. You never did that before. That'd be the first time you ever did it. It's an odd day. This really intrusive thought to go into a trunk. It also would say, Rob, you have 2 eyes. It's an odd day. Do you need 1 eye? So you're kind of struggling with, I don't want to hurt myself, and I'm scared if I don't do this, something is going to happen. So there's an internal struggle. And the thoughts become very intrusive, and then I have to have a compulsion to kind of overtake that intrusive thought. So basically it would say, do this or this would happen. Do this 9 times or this will happen. So when I had the intrusive thought to go into the trunk, I went to the guidance counselor of my school and I said to her, I'm really scared. I'm having a really fearful thought and I'm scared of the thought. I knew I wasn't going to do it. I think we all know, anybody who's experienced intrusive thoughts know that we're not going to do it, but it doesn't mean it's not scary. And doesn't mean the thought doesn't scare us. So I knew I wasn't going to do it, but just thinking about going into a trunk was so terrifying that I told her, could you take me to the hospital? And she did. And then, I don't know if you saw my episode from OCD to CEO, but they would not let me leave. They would not let me leave the hospital. They just must have thought at that point, I'm trying to reflect, that they thought maybe I was suicidal, that I was hearing voices, and that I was a danger to myself.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to lead up to. But first, Lamia, like, I know there's something that you wanted to say, so go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify for people that might not understand the odd days. So when you say odd days and numbers, so for example, the number 3, like today you ran 3 times, like you have to do an activity a certain amount of times per day, or is it the actual day, like January 3rd?
No, the number. It's the number,
Okay.
not the date. So I don't have to run 3 times, but let's say I'll give you, I was a teenager when this happened. So let's say I'm in class. I could ask a question. It has to be 1 time, 3 times, 7 times. It doesn't have to be the number of the date. It has to be representative of an odd number. So 3 represents, it's an odd day.
So there's almost like a meaning in the numbers, right? And there's almost like a discomfort in odd numbers that you found. And from there, like, that's kind of how your thoughts became quite intrusive, or like that relationship that you built between those odd numbers just became intrusive thoughts down the line.
And it's interesting because they're intrusive and they're scary, but yet if I complete the task, if I'm in class and I ask a question 1 time, 3 times, 5 times, then I'm stopping something bad from happening. So I base the numbers on control. Ultimately, I want to be clear. I want control. That's what OCD is.
Yeah.
It's a way for me to feel like I'm in control. So by me knowing that if I do this many times, I am in control. So if I do something 3 times, 5 times, 7 times, I'm in control. If I do something 4 times on an odd day, well, then I'm not in control and something bad could happen to me. I need to regain my control and make sure I do it an odd number of times. It's all about control. That's what it's about. And it's very scary because the more control you want, the less control you actually have.
Absolutely. That's quite factual in a lot of aspects of people's lives. But just in general, was there a moment where you were able to identify like that particular pain point, or, you know, how it ended up growing to that extent afterwards?
I recognized that particular pain point when I actually got released from the hospital. It was at that point when, you know, they put you on medication, they have you living in a hospital, they don't understand what's going on. I realized at one point when I left the hospital that these thoughts that I was giving into, that I was so scared of, were controlling me. And that was very painful, that I became what I thought these thoughts were to protect me. I had the realization after leaving the hospital, these thoughts were not protecting me. These thoughts were to hurt me, were to scare me, and to give me a false sense of control. It's actually called magical thinking. It's making me believe something that's not true, making me scared that if I don't do this, this will happen, and making me believe I have a false sense of control, because ultimately I don't have control. And I realized that this was more painful and more hurtful than, you know, than living with, like, this was such a painful, hurtful thing that I knew that I had to get rid of it, and that wanting that control was not worth it anymore.
It's interesting because, like, oftentimes these things tend to stem as a basis from anxiety, right? Anxiety, you know, they say is kind of almost the gateway to all of the other types of mental illnesses that, you know, some people have gone through. You know, like that OCD might have been built from that foundation of anxiety, and that's when you start to find particular meaning in those numbers, right? Or what you call magical numbers or magical thinking in this case. What I want to know was, like, for example, was there maybe a cause to that? Was there something that happened, let's say, in your life?
So I think what happened is, for me, I've always had anxiety, always had fear. What happened with me is I ended up seeing, I saw, when I was very young, probably about 11 years old, I saw a movie of a child around my age who had cancer. And it was an NBC, I'll never forget it, TV movie of the week. And at one moment in the movie, this young child had cancer, and a nurse was showing the child how to inject themselves. So they took an orange and they said, okay, this is going to be your knee, and this is how you're going to inject yourself every morning. And I had this moment, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. Oh, no, I don't want cancer. Oh, no, I don't want that. Oh, well, if you do this, Rob, you won't get cancer. Oh, my grandmother had diabetes. I don't want that. I don't want diabetes. Oh, don't worry. Do this, you won't get it.
Yeah.
Do that, you won't get it.
Within your family, did your parents kind of see signs of you becoming a bit anxious or paranoid, or were you very closed off from the world around you?
It's such a good question, because I've been trying to go back to that time. And in my private practice, I have so many clients now who struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder and intrusive thoughts that it became very relevant again. Like I put that, it's kind of interesting. I put that in a shelf and put it away, and kind of like, you know, like this like secret, dirty secret, like, yeah, you don't want to say that you were in an institution. You don't want people to know that you were there. So it's something I never really thought I was going to open up again. And it became such a basis for my clients to help them, that I try to reflect a lot. I think that people didn't notice. I think it's an internal struggle. Like I think it's so subtle to others, but not to yourself. Like I'll give you a very good example. Like I never forgot this. I was in my classroom and I had to crack one of my fingers 25 times, odd times. And it had to be 25 times. And I couldn't get that last snap. And I remember, so I'm just sitting in that classroom, I'm trying to get that snap. Okay, I'm at 24, and 24 means you're gonna get sick. I'm trying to get that snap, but nobody knows. I'm sitting there and nobody knows. I'm not listening to what the teacher's saying, but nobody knows I'm sitting in that classroom trying to get that snap.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because nobody sees it, nobody knows it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, Rob, you gotta get that snap or you're gonna get cancer. And I'm just sitting there quietly trying to get that snap. And I never forgot that, because I was looking around and I just felt so alone, because I was. I mean, I tell people this is an internal struggle. You are alone.
Yes, you are
alone.
Yes.
You are. It's scary, because I work with there's a young girl, and I see her parents, and the parents are like, what can I do? What can I do? She actually has to. It's so fascinating, by the way. This might sound like it's new. Like this might sound like, Rob, this is like strange. This actually I see very similar, almost identical to my clients now. I'm scared I'm going to do this. I'm scared I'm going to do that. So one of my clients has to, it's interesting, she also has to do this 4 times, do this 6 times, do this 2 times, hop on one leg, do that. And sometimes she has to also she has to hear a certain amount of cracks in her neck.
Wow.
And her parents say, what can we do? They look at me, Rob, what could we do to help her? Mm-hmm. And I said, nothing. This is the struggle between her and those thoughts. Yes. This is a struggle that you are on your own. Those are your thoughts. These are your compulsions. These are your intrusive feelings. These are yours to heal.
Yeah.
This is a very lonely, scary journey, but you can do it. But you're on your own. It's personal. It's personal.
Like it's almost as if like you're playing a game against your mind.
You are.
Literally that. So like if you do not finish this stage, you are going to have a big consequence in the end. And well, you know, just like being in that kind of like consistent repetition of mindset is, I mean, I couldn't imagine it personally.
I think, Lamia, you're familiar with this story. I'm pretty sure I've shared it with you. It's like the story of 2 wolves.
Mm. Oh, lovely.
Right?
I think I heard that one 4 times when I came to see you.
It's like the story of the 2 wolves. It's like a little, it's a folklore story about a little boy who goes into the woods with his grandfather, and they see 2 wolves. And actually in the folklore, one of the wolves is described as evil, as mean, as cruel and vicious. And the other wolf is very kind and loving and compassionate and caring. And the little boy sees these 2 wolves, the evil wolf and the kind wolf, and says to his grandfather, Grandpa, which of these wolves is going to win? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. So inside us, we have those 2 wolves. We have that internal struggle. Mm-hmm. We have that wolf that is telling you, do this or you're going to get cancer. And then you have this other wolf that says, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. So it is like a game with yourself, and who is your opponent? Is it going to be the one that's going to take you and love you, or is it going to be the one that's going to scare you and shake you up? Mm-hmm. So we have to be very mindful of which wolf are you playing with? Mm-hmm. Which wolf are you playing with? And be careful not to feed the fear. So I was making a very big mistake. It's a common mistake. Most of my clients make this mistake. They feed the fear. They feed the compulsion. They say, okay, well, I don't want to get cancer, so I'm going to jump up 25 times. Mm-hmm. I'm going to crack my neck 100 times. I don't want to get poisoned, so I'm going to starve myself and I'm not going to eat for a few days. These are what's going on.
I wanted to ask you, is there, they diagnose you with anything in particular when you were hospitalized? Okay.
So I was diagnosed officially with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was hospitalized at 16. They gave me Prozac, which I thought was an antidepressant. It didn't do anything for me. I'm not going to say I'm pro or against medication. I'm going to go back to my original statement. This is a struggle between you and yourself. Regardless of what you choose to do, medication, not medication, you need to still be able to not give in to the compulsions, not give in to the fear.
It relates a lot to me because, again, I was like bulimic, and for a very long time I was like on and off bulimic, and for me it was so part of my reality. I don't know how to explain it. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew that internally I was struggling and it wasn't facilitating my life in any way. It was actually harming me and the people around me, and I was very, very aware of that. But it was so difficult for me to put an end to it. Why? Because it was just a coping mechanism, and it became part of my identity. I was like, if I don't throw up, who the freaking hell am I, right? And it was so engraved in me that this is what I had to do every day. Kind of very similar to you, where it's like, if I don't make myself throw up, like, oh my God, like I'm going to be fat, or like I'm going to be uncomfortable in my body. And I did become uncomfortable in my body when I wasn't doing the normal actions that I was so used to. And it took like a huge event to break that cycle for me. And it was even hard to talk about. I didn't even talk about it with you. I remember I came to see you and I hadn't even mentioned it because for me, it was so normalized. And for me, I was like, it doesn't change my character. It doesn't change me as a person. I don't see anything wrong with doing this. And I think with a lot of people, again, when it's a battle against yourself, but you're comfortable with it, it's very easy to say, you know what, so be it. I'm just going to let that happen to me. And it's very difficult to seek help, and it's very difficult to come outwardly and, you know, express your thoughts. And when you were having these intrusive thoughts, I'm guessing you didn't really tell your friends or your parents about these thoughts, right? Because
I didn't, you know, it's also, there is still, we know, I like what you said, in that, you know, what you're doing is, you know, it's kind of wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's not.
It's like abnormal. You're like,
you just
I don't think everyone does this.
This is not exactly like the best thing, you know. Yeah. You know, like when I went to the guidance counselor, I knew my thoughts and compulsions were not healthy.
I mean, you were seeking help too. You went to her and you were kind of,
it was last straw.
Yeah.
I'll be honest though, I'm going to tell you, by the time I went to her, it was at the point where I was so scared that, like, I was really scared, like maybe I actually am going to go into this trunk. Like when I went to her, the thoughts started to become big. So the thoughts did become, it felt, they were not, but the thoughts felt they were bigger than me. So it did come to a point where it's kind of like, I need help. This is too big. This is too big for me right now. They're not stopping. They're more intrusive. They're scarier, like blind yourself, go into a trunk. They're scaring me too much, and I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know like what I'm gonna do. So, but I didn't reach out right away. I really waited until I literally remember, I remember like very well going to the guidance counselor. If I give you the story completely accurate, she had, it's very embarrassing actually. She had a container of sharp pencils in her, on her table. And one of, you know, was an odd day. I remember that very well. It was an odd day because I saw those sharp pencils and my thought originally was, don't go into a trunk. Go into a trunk. It's an odd day. And then I saw the sharp pencils and that associates with, well, you should have one eye. It's an odd day. So I asked her, could you please put those pencils away in her drawer? That was the first thing I asked her to do, because I had that thought, like, those are pencils, get rid of one of your eyes. And then the second thing I said to her was, could you take me to a hospital?
Wow.
It's quite a dark thought, like to just kind of associate everything.
Even odd days, this, that, like, so I saw those sharp pencils and it was like, okay, could you please put those into the drawer, because now my mind is going there, and then I don't want to ask them to count the pencils or know what are this, and then take me to a hospital. And I guess I wasn't prepared, and I guess this is a shocking part, and we're talking about pain, is there's a lot of pain, and also when I went to the hospital and they wouldn't let me leave.
Because we question,
let me leave.
We question kind of like, why do the thoughts become violent at some point, right? Like, sometimes it could start something very innocent, like, oh, crack your knuckles, or, jump 3 times. And then it gets even more and more and more intrusive. And that's when it becomes dangerous. And like, then, you get to the hospital and then you realize all this.
And they're thinking like, what's he up to? Like, they actually were like, are these voices? Are these, what's going on? Like, what are you, like, they don't know too. Like, all they hear is, this is a kid that came in who says he wants to go into a trunk, who says that he wants to poke his eye out, that says that he wants to, like, he has to do this and do that. So they don't understand it. And and that's why I said again, it's a very lonely, painful journey, because people don't understand it. They judge it immediately because they're like, something's wrong with you? Do you have schizophrenia? Are you suicidal? Do you have a plan to kill yourself? I'm like, no, I don't. Well, how long have you been thinking about this? Well, I've been thinking about it for a while. Okay, so now you have a plan to do it. And before I know it, I'm literally, I got tied up. I didn't want to stay. And the security guard took me and tied me up to my bed.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I was not allowed to leave. And it's just like, there's a lot of pain and a lot of shame that come with being, and this is where it's interesting, where people are like, my parents were like, yeah, don't tell your cousins, don't say anything to them. Don't let them know. I think they were telling, like my cousins, like, oh yeah, he's like studying in Toronto or something. I don't even know what, because I was MIA for 3 months.
Wow. There's a lot of shame, I think, especially surrounding mental health in general, right? Especially because it's still so misunderstood.
To this day.
Yeah.
To this
and this was in the 90s. So I can't even imagine.
90s.
They didn't even understand what the hell was going on to you.
90 is crazy. I will say we're further than we were in the 90s, but I would have to say, not as far as I thought we would be.
I agree. When I came out with my bulimia, I had people reaching out to me saying that they were also bulimic. I will never forget this. There was a guy that was studying with me at Concordia, the same project. For 3 months we were together, and he was bulimic as well. And we had no idea we were both bulimic in the same group doing a project for school.
Bulimia is very interesting about bulimia, because bulimia is considered, and I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure bulimia is considered an anxiety disorder as well.
Yeah, so it's an addiction, it's an anxiety disorder. It's compulsive addiction, right? It is, because you can't stop yourself from eating and you can't stop yourself from purging, and it becomes a cycle, just like intrusive thoughts. It's like one thought comes in, they're going to keep coming in, and you feed into them as well.
I want to give you all, like your viewers, a really interesting reason why we feed. Don't you all want to know why we feed? Why do we feed it? Like, why do you feed the bulimia? Why do I feed the compulsive thoughts? And I'm going to tell you why we feed. So imagine, I'll give you the most basic example. You lock your door. You lock your door of your apartment or your house. Okay, you lock the door. You have a thought. Is the door locked? Let me check it. You go to the door. You check the door. You get this. A sigh of relief. It's locked. That sigh of relief feels good. So what do? You know what? Let me check that door one more time. Just want to make sure it's locked. And you get, again, that sigh of relief. So why it's so hard to treat and hard to stop is because there is a bodily response of relief when we do it. Like when you throw up, it's like, it's done. I'm good now. I got that done. Ooh, that felt good. Okay.
Yeah. And it does feel good. I know it sounds
does.
disgusting, but I think it's the same thing with your intrusive thoughts when you're like cracking your fingers and then you're at that 25th, you're like, yes, mission accomplished.
I get
It's like a high. It's a high. It's a high.
It's a high. And like any drug, it's addicting.
Yeah.
So now your brain says to you, that felt good. That felt good throwing up that time. You felt in control. You felt you're empowered. Let's do it again. And that's why we continue to do it. That felt good. You snapped those fingers and now you don't have cancer. Don't you feel good? Let's try something else now.
You're creating a habit.
Yes.
You know, you're kind of creating that habit, you're repeating that habit, and eventually it becomes your behavior. And that's often what, you know, people don't really understand, right? When you repeat something oftentimes, it becomes part of you. Now, the idea here is, how do we break that habit, right? How are we able to heal from the things that are actually doing harm onto us? You know, like, how are we able to change that? And that's, you know, the big kind of question, right? When we're trying to break free from this thing that we're kind of, that's eating us in some way, right? We're feeding it, but it's eating us in return.
So it's a great question that we all want to know. Okay, so we know we have the compulsions, we know about all of this. Now what do we do about it? How do we break it? Great question. How do we break it? It goes back to the story of the two wolves. How do you break it? You have to stop feeding it.
Exactly.
That's how you break it. So when Lamia has the urge and desire to throw up, and there's no shame for that, because we want that control. And it's not coming from a bad place. When Lamia or anybody does these things, like myself, it's almost in a weird way, and Lamia, you can tell me if you agree, in a weird way, trying to protect ourselves. We're actually kind of trying to help her in a weird, twisted, perverted way. We're actually trying to help ourselves in a very destructive way, but we're coming from a place of like, well, I'm doing this to kind of, you know, help myself out. I don't want to get cancer, so I'm snapping my fingers 100 times.
And again,
so there's no shame. I think we need to take away the shame. I think it was very courageous and brave of Lamia to share that story, because unfortunately people are like, oh, really? Bulimia, vanity, this, that. Oh no. Oh no. Actually, it has nothing to do. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to sound very controversial right now. Oh my God. But it has nothing to do with weight. It really doesn't.
That's factual, actually.
Oh, is it? Because it's control. It is not about weight. It's about control. My OCD is not about cancer. It's not about leukemia. It's not about diabetes. Lamia's bulimia is not about weight. It's about control. It's about feeling in control. It's about anxiety. It's about fear. It's not about what we think it's about. So we have to first recognize that, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Why am I really doing this? And what am I going to do to stop this destructive behavior? Because ultimately, we know it's destructive. And whether or not we get a high from it, we feel good from it, we know at our core that it's not right. It's not okay. It is not appropriate. It is not okay. It's hurtful. It's hurtful. It's shameful, not because we're coming from a bad place, because we're hurting ourselves. We're hurting ourselves. Every time Lamia or myself did something like this, we're actually hurting ourselves.
Because you're letting, again, you know, the wolf, you know, that's kind of backed up by fear and everything, control your life, right? Again, you're letting that fear control your life rather than, let's say, that kindness, or, you know, coming from a place of kindness for yourself, right? So like just telling yourself the good things versus telling yourself the bad things, right? And this is kind of like how our mind works, you know, oftentimes, unfortunately, is, you know, because, you know, as humans, we're still in some way animals, right? We still, you know, from an evolutionary perspective, we still wanted to survive. And how do we learn to survive is by learning from our mistakes or things that are, you know, dangerous towards us, right? And oftentimes we, you know, like people, we tend to internalize things differently. And again, those turn into our coping mechanisms, right? In your case, your OCD, and in Lamia's case, the bulimia. but everyone
Absolutely.
has their own way of coping with their own like issues, whether big or small, right? So it's a very interesting kind of like, way to see it here. Robert, I'd like to ask you, like, for you personally, has there been a recovery in like, in from your OCD, or is it something that you've learned to kind of just navigate or cope with over time, or were you actually able to overcome it?
That's a really, really great question. And I really mean it because it's not an easy answer, but it's a great question. Um, I do not consider myself somebody who has obsessive compulsive disorder at all anymore. I do not have those intrusive thoughts at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that is still part of me. That still did happen. And to say that I never had an intrusive thought since then would be untruthful. So the best way for me to answer this is truthfully. I do not get compulsive thoughts anymore because I know better, and my brain will not go there because it knows I won't comply. So I've reconditioned my brain to be like, yeah, you want me to do that, I'll get cancer. Well, I'll get cancer, so I won't do it. But so I won't do it. So it does not have that power over me. But I will be honest with you. That's still who I was, who I am. And I will get a thought, maybe like 2 months ago or whatever, and I'll be like, Rob, get this done or you're not going to get the contract. And I don't give into it, but it came. I didn't give into it, I didn't feed it, and to answer your question, you didn't ask me, no, I didn't. I didn't do it because it told me to do it. I did not do it. I did not listen to fear. I did not listen to the evil, angry wolf. Yeah. But I'll get the thought, like not very, very rarely, but I'll get one. I'll get a thought because it's again coming from a state of control and wanting to like get the contract. So that thought is coming from, well, do this and you'll get it. But I don't give into it. It doesn't affect my life. I don't have even an odd day. I don't even know what date it is most of the time. I don't even know what day it is, what time it is.
That's a relief.
I don't even know.
Nobody knows what day it is.
Nobody knows
what day it is, what time it is. So I don't know that. So no, that's all gone. Like,
but I think
it's gone.
There's something very interesting that you mentioned, right? Again, it's a part of you, right? And it's not something that you can deny.
No.
And I don't think there's any, or there should be even any shame in denying that this was something that, that was part of your life, because eventually it's something that you also grew from, and it's something that you learned from. And, this is what brought you to where you are today. And so
it's a battle scar. It's a battle scar.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Were you going to say that? It's a battle scar. And you know what? When Lamia, I'm going to tell you, when I saw that post on Facebook, what you did, and I'm going to tell you in my perspective as a spectator who saw that post, I said, she just showed her battle scar as a sense of pride. Mm-hmm. She's like, this is my battle scar. Oh yeah, this is it. This is me. Like the scar or not, that's my scar. And why would you want to hide that scar? I would tell somebody, wear it proud, show it, wear it, help people with it, learn from it. So it's beautiful to see somebody not cover it and hide it. Like, oh, really? That happened to you? Oh, I don't understand that. Then to say, oh yeah, here, let me show it to you. Here, actually, let me do a close-up of it. Do you see how deep it was? Yeah, I overcame that. See how deep? Do you see how deep that scar is?
I just want to add to that. For me, the way that I overcame bulimia, and I think, Rob, you know this, like I had a really bad breakup, and that kind of was like the eye opener, because it just allowed me to face myself truly without being loved by any external thing. And that's how I was able to overcome it myself, which is not a great way. It's not a great example for a lot of people, because I wouldn't want anyone to wait for a big event to happen to them for them to stop doing a negative behavior to themselves. I think for a lot of people, again, it's really hard to talk about it. It's really hard to seek help. You had said that, you know, you no longer have OCD, you no longer have those intrusive thoughts as much as you did. They still come and go, but you choose to kind of ignore them and put them aside. How were you able to do this?
How I did it. And I don't want to make it sound as easy as it is or it was.
Everyone is different. So
everyone is different. So
yeah.
I'm going to tell you how I did it. So yes, I was in a hospital for months. And I was inpatient and outpatient. So you're talking almost a year. I'm talking about 3 months as an inpatient. But we're not talking about how I went to school there too. So I was, it was a good year of my life within the hospital system. I had OCD 100% when I left the hospital. I probably told him it's better, who knows, but it wasn't. But I didn't want to be there. And it was only in my early 20s, actually, when my OCD went away, 99% of it. It was when I was working at Provigo, it was actually Loblaws back in the day. And I worked at the electronic and photo lab department.
Okay.
And this was really old school also. This was early thousands. And we had old school, but we had those disposable cameras, the ones that were 24 hours, you know, like 24 hours to produce, or 1 hour. And I had a bunch of these camera rolls that I had to like enter in to my book. And I was starving. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was starving, and my thought said to me, Rob, you better enter all those cameras into the book, like all the names and the photo numbers into that book, or you're gonna get fired. That was the intrusive thought. And I said, you know what, I'm starving. Then I'm gonna get fired. And then it came back. Oh yeah, then you're gonna get cancer. And I will never forget how I put the cameras away, went to the punch out, punched out, ordered myself my food, sat there, and I said, can I get cancer? I wanted my freedom.
That's such beautiful.
More than I cared about cancer, diabetes, death. I wanted my freedom. And I said, enough. So to answer that question, it was when I finally said, enough. And I also made a comment that I felt the thoughts were bigger than me, right? But I want to be honest, the thoughts are never bigger than you. Actually, you're in control of the thoughts. You have a thought, doesn't mean you have to give in to the thought. I look at the thought as a mouse. And it's appearing to be this big tiger. But let me tell you something. Without you, it can't be fed. So how big can it really be? It needs you to do the movement, or it has no power. So it's not bigger than me, because ultimately I did not enter those things into the book. I am in control. I am in power, not the thought. Now, I want to be honest, we cannot stop thoughts from coming. And you made a comment about intrusive thoughts and why do they get violent and why do they get intrusive. You know what I say to those things? It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter. People get tons of very intrusive, scared, very weird, violent, shady thoughts, okay? Doesn't matter. What matters is you don't give into it, you don't feed it, you don't bring life into it, and that you know that you're in control, not your thought. At the end of the day, I can get a thought to go into a trunk. I laugh, please, come on. It knows better. Don't even go there with me. Don't even go there with me, or we're not going to watch Netflix, you know?
We've actually had this discussion before, I think, Lamia and I as well, right? And I remember I kept telling you, I'm like, you have to filter your thoughts. You know, you cannot let these like parasitic, thoughts in some way or form invade your thought process in general, because the second you let this parasite into your mind and into your thought process is the moment that it will grow, because it needs you to be fed. So if you're not feeding it, again,
it starves.
It's not going to grow.
For someone that does have a pain point, or for someone that is stuck in a situation and they're afraid or ashamed to talk about it, what would be your best advice to them to come forward with their problem?
I would say, although it's a personal journey, go to somebody who you trust, If there's nobody that you feel you can trust or talk to, seek professional help from a trusted mental health professional. Don't sit and suffer with it. At some point, we do need the help. Although it is a journey on our own, we need that help to guide us. So just know that it's okay to have these thoughts. It's okay to do these things. It's okay to have this pain. That's okay. But what's not okay is not doing anything about it. Sitting with it, living with it, saying, you know what, this is it. I'm going to sit with my pain. This is who I am. That's not okay. You're more than that. You deserve more than that. You need more than that. So my best advice would be to reach out to somebody, share it, break that stigma, share it, let it out and start working on healing. And you can't heal until it's in treatment or some sort of way to treat it. It's not just going to go away. I will tell you that right now. It's not just going to go away.
No.
So if you're going to just say, well, hopefully one day it's going to go away, it's not. Actually, I just want to be very clear. It will actually get worse. Yeah. This is a scientific fact. Anxiety specifically without treatment gets worse with time, not better, which actually makes sense. If I'm scared of an elevator and I avoid the elevator, my fear doesn't go away. I'm continuing to be more scared of that elevator. So by not seeking the help, not moving forward, you're creating more pain actually. You really are creating more pain for yourself. So start to heal by start to deal. That actually binds.
That was amazing. And I think, again, going back to having people understand that it does take a lot of patience to recover. I think the healing journey is actually, for me, it was tougher than actually being bulimic. Like, not being bulimic to me, I'm like a new person. I don't recognize myself sometimes because I have so much time on my hands because I'm not like doing what I was doing before. And I have all these new thoughts that come in and they're positive, and I'm like, oh, I'm a positive person. Like, this is exciting. But it does cause a lot of fear because, as Tamara mentioned, that you're changing and you're adapting, and with change comes like unknown. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to being bulimic. I might. And I think it's the same thing as you, where you have your intrusive thoughts that are going to come in, but you kind of accept that.
And I'm going to tell you, and I really don't think, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't think you'll go back, and I'll tell you why. I really don't, and I'm going to tell you why I say that. It's very similar to me. You're not the same person or have the same mindset as the person who did that. So yes, it's a part of you, but it's not the same you. It's very hard, I'll be honest. When you do the work, when you're very self-aware, when you understand, it's very hard to actually go back to the self-destructive behaviors with that type of awareness. So I understand it's a struggle and we never want to go back. I don't ever want to go back, but we also have to know we're also not the same person. You're not the same person who did that. You don't have the same mindset as that person who did that. So you need to take that in too, because there's a growth that came with that, and an understanding and an awareness that you may not have had before. So it's a very scary thing to think we can go back, but most likely we don't or won't. Most likely. I mean, you're right, there's always that possibility, but most likely we won't, because we're not the same people who've gone through those things. So
I agree. Well, again, thank you so much, Rob, for doing this. And I mean, you're a professional. If anyone needs to seek help, I came to see you. Rise and Anxiety, the Rise Anxiety and Depression Clinic is there in the West Island, offering the services for anyone that needs them. And we're super excited about your podcast as well. I've been watching a few episodes, and we're really happy to have you on our show. And thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with us today.
And I'm going to tell you, it's an honor to do this, and it's always my pleasure to be part of something to help people. And I commend both of you. Commend is the right word, right? Commend?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was worried. Commend. That's it. Okay, thank you. She knows what I meant. Commend.
I commend.
Okay, yes, I wanted to make sure I said it. I commend both of you for doing this. This is what we need. I wish there was things like this when I was 16 years old.
Oh, we're super happy.
Good job. Keep
Yeah.
it up. I'm going to subscribe to your channel. I'm going to follow you. You guys are awesome. You're doing amazing work. And I'm going to tell you, this is the work that is needed from people who actually have been through it.
Thank
So
you
keep
so,
it up.
so
And
much.
we're here together.
Yes.
We're all here together. We all get it, okay?
We all get it. Thank you
We all get
again.
it. Have a wonderful evening.
Robert,
You're
Have a
doing
nice
amazing.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.